Welcome to Finding God's Voice in Digital Noise, the podcast that really aims to help us all slow down, tune in, and hopefully rediscover spiritual clarity in what feels like this incredibly hyper-connected world. Emmanuel, if you've ever felt just absolutely overwhelmed by notifications, or you find yourself totally distracted during prayer, or honestly just spiritually numb because life feels so incredibly loud, then this series, I truly believe, is for you.
Manasseh, it's so true. I think everyone can relate to this. Have you ever noticed that the very moments you try to actually sit down and pray, those are the exact moments your phone suddenly becomes the most interesting object in the universe? It's like it knows. A notification pops up, then another, you check one message, and before you know it, 10-15 minutes have passed, and your prayer, well, it never even really started.
Absolutely. It's a universal experience, isn't it? And you are definitely not alone if you feel that way. In fact, almost everyone I speak to, from young adults who grew up with this tech to seasoned pastors, admits they struggle to hear God clearly in this digital age. It's a real challenge. Today, in our very first episode, we're really diving deep into why. Why does this digital overload, this constant barrage of information, make us feel so spiritually disconnected? Why does all this constant noise make God's whisper so incredibly hard to discern? And I think most importantly, what can we actually do about it?
It's a crucial starting point. We really are caught in this invisible storm, aren't we? We're living in an era that humanity has simply never seen before. Think about it. Never in history have we literally carried the entire world. The news, the opinions, the conflicts, the constant updates, endless temptations, all of it, right there in our pockets, 24/7. It's wild.
It's absolutely unprecedented. We are reachable, as you said, 24/7. We are mentally overstimulated, emotionally overloaded, and frankly, I think a lot of us are spiritually exhausted. We often think we're tired because we're busy, which, sure, sometimes we are, but so often I believe we're tired because we are fundamentally digitally overwhelmed. It's a different kind of exhaustion.
That's such a vital distinction, Manasseh. And it's not just a feeling, there's a real cognitive basis for it. I remember hearing a perspective from Dr. Elaine Grant, a cognitive psychologist, who once said something really profound. The human brain was built for focused attention, not for jumping between 15 apps every hour. Digital overload fragments your attention, and fragmented attention fragments your spiritual life. That just hit me like a ton of bricks when I first heard it.
Oh, that is so powerful. Fragmented attention fragments your spiritual life. Wow. Because spiritually, attention is absolutely everything, isn't it? When we look at Scripture, God often speaks in those quiet moments, in the stillness. Think about 1 Kings 19, right? God was not in the fierce wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in a still small voice, a gentle whisper. And here we are, living in arguably the loudest era in human history, and God still whispers. It just makes you wonder, how can we possibly hear it?
That juxtaposition is stark, isn't it? The world screams and God whispers. It really highlights the challenge. And this digital overload, it affects our spiritual lives in some pretty significant ways. I see it primarily in three major areas. First, and perhaps most subtly, it dulls our spiritual sensitivity. When your mind is constantly stimulated, always buzzing, silence starts to feel really uncomfortable. Stillness feels foreign, almost alien. Prayer, which requires that deep focus, feels slow, maybe even boring. And reading Scripture, it just feels hard, like an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's like our spiritual muscles atrophy from lack of use in quiet spaces. Our spirit isn't necessarily weak, it's just constantly overstimulated, perpetually in overdrive. So when it's time to engage with something quiet, something reflective, it resists. It's like trying to run a marathon on a brain that's been sprinting through notifications all day.
Exactly. And the second way it impacts us is that it constantly interrupts our communion with God. We're always reachable by everyone else, right? Friends, family, colleagues, social media feeds. But how often are we truly reachable by God? I've heard Pastor Michael Adeyemi say, people say God doesn't speak. No, God speaks. But many believers haven't given him a quiet moment long enough to be heard. That really resonates. We've become so accustomed to instant replies and constant communication that we might miss the slower, more patient way God communicates.
That's so true, Emmanuel. It's not a deficiency on God's part, it's a problem with our reception. We've essentially created so much static that the signal can't get through. And then the third major impact, which I think is perhaps the heaviest, is that it creates immense emotional and spiritual noise. We carry the emotional weight of the whole world, don't we? The wars, the disasters, the endless tragedies, the gossip, the arguments, the debates, the crises, it's all right there, accessible instantly. We were simply never designed to process this much information, this much trauma, this much division, all at once, every single day.
It's an unsustainable burden. And this is why so many Christians, when you talk to them, describe feeling spiritually dry, mentally tired, easily distracted, emotionally drained, and often just completely unmotivated to pray or even read scripture. It's not always, as you said, a faith problem. Sometimes it truly is an input problem. We're just taking in too much, too fast, without any filter or processing time.
Precisely. It's the modern believer's dilemma, isn't it? Let me share a real-life scenario, one I hear again and again, and I'm sure it resonates with many listeners. Someone wakes up, and what's the first thing they touch? Their phone. Not prayer, not scripture, not gratitude, but messages, news alerts, TikTok, a group chat. Before God has even had a chance to speak, the world has already spoken. Their emotions are already being shaped by strangers' opinions. Their peace is already affected by the latest news cycle. Their identity is already being influenced by whatever they scroll past. It's like we're starting every day on the defensive.
That's a terrifying thought when you put it like that. The battle for our day is often lost in the first 5 minutes. Sarah O'Neill, a digital well-being researcher, put it perfectly when she said, "The first voice you hear in the morning often sets the emotional tone of your entire day." If it's digital noise, your mind becomes reactive instead of reflective. And that reactive state is exactly where we don't want to be when we're trying to connect with God.
It's so true. And if we're honest with ourselves, many of us spend hours scrolling each day, sometimes without even realizing it, but we struggle to pray for even 10 minutes without distraction. And look, this doesn't mean we're spiritually weak. It simply means we're fighting a battle our ancestors never had to fight. We're in uncharted territory when it comes to the sheer volume of external inputs.
It's a completely new kind of spiritual warfare, really. And the spiritual implications of this are profound. When your mind is constantly overloaded with information, it becomes so much harder to recognize God's leading in your life. God might be trying to prompt you, to comfort you, to correct you, to warn you, to reassure you, but you're scrolling so fast, you're processing so much that you completely miss the whisper. It's like trying to hear a friend whisper to you in the middle of a crowded, booming nightclub. You just can't do it.
That's a perfect analogy, Emmanuel. The noise itself isn't sinful, it's just loud. Incredibly, relentlessly loud. And spiritual clarity, that sense of knowing God's direction, understanding His heart, it absolutely requires spiritual quiet. It's non-negotiable. I remember Danielle Sarpong, a Christian therapist, once commenting that most modern believers don't have a spiritual problem, they have a noise problem. Reduce the noise, and God's voice becomes clearer. It's such a simple truth, yet so challenging to implement in our current environment.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But it's true. And that leads us to a bit of a personal reflection moment for all of us, me included. Let me ask you something, and I really encourage everyone listening to be honest with yourself on this. When was the last time you truly prayed with your phone on airplane mode? Not just silent, but completely disconnected. Or when was the last time you read scripture without checking your notifications even once, or having that little ding in the background?
Yeah, and I'll add to that. When was the last time you gave God your undivided, completely undistracted attention? And honestly, when was the last time you just sat in silence, with no agenda, no podcast, no music, no scrolling, just to listen, really listen? If your honest answer to those questions is, "It's been a while," or "I don't even remember," that's okay. This episode isn't about guilt, it's purely about awareness. You cannot change what you won't acknowledge. And that acknowledgement is the first step towards finding that clarity again.
That's such an important point. No guilt, just awareness. So before we close today's episode, we really want to give you a simple, actionable exercise. We call it the digital self-audit. And we want you to do this today. Just take 5 minutes, seriously, just 5 minutes, and ask yourself some honest questions. How many hours do I actually spend on my phone daily? And be honest, use your phone's screen time tracker if you need to. Which apps specifically drain me emotionally or spiritually? Which platforms consistently distract me from prayer or quiet reflection? What digital habits do I have that actively steal my peace? And finally, when am I most vulnerable to distraction? Is it first thing in the morning, late at night, during quiet times I've set aside?
Yeah, write it down, even if it's just a mental note, but writing it down often solidifies it. Because that awareness truly is the first, most crucial step towards spiritual clarity. And then, from that awareness, choose just one digital boundary you can begin today. Just one. Don't try to change everything at once. Small steps create massive spiritual breakthroughs. Here are some ideas. No phone for the first 10 minutes after waking up. Or maybe no phone during meals. No phone in bed, keeping that space sacred for rest or connection with your loved ones. Turn off non-essential notifications. You'll be amazed how much peace that brings. Or designate just one quiet hour a day with no devices at all. Just one. That's all it takes to start seeing a shift.
One small step, but it's a powerful step towards reclaiming your focus and your spiritual connection. Digital overload is real, Manasseh, and it's profoundly shaping the spiritual lives of millions, often without them even realizing it. But the good news, the truly wonderful news is this. You can absolutely take your attention back. You can take your peace back. You can take your clarity back. You can take your ability to hear God back. He's still there, still speaking. All he truly needs is just a little room to whisper.
That's it, just a little quiet space. Next week, in episode 2, we're going to explore even further how constant connectivity affects your spiritual life, and we'll dive into more practical, actionable steps on how to truly reconnect with God in a world that often feels utterly addicted to connection. Thank you so much for listening to episode 1 of Finding God's Voice in Digital Noise. If this episode spoke to you, I encourage you, genuinely, take a moment today just to sit in silence, even if it's just for 1 minute. You might be surprised how loud God becomes when the world gets quiet.